Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, it appears that retired Army Colonel Karl Nell might become the next director of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. Now, as we all know, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who's the director right now, he's going to be he's resigning and he'll be gone by the end of this year. But his replacement has not yet been named. But it sounds like, according to Ross Coulthart, the Australian investigative journalist, it sounds like there's a chance that Karl Nell, who I was talking about last week a lot, is going to become the next director. We don't know that for sure yet, and of course, a lot of people in the UFO community, including Ross Coulthart himself, thinks it remains to be seen, because Karl Nell, as we all know, is someone who stands by whistleblower David Grusch. So it's hard to imagine the Pentagon choosing a director of like someone like Karl Nell, because Karl Nell is not someone who seems interested in maintaining the cover-up, and that's what the Pentagon obviously is interested in, maintaining the cover-up. But hey, if it happens, it'd be awesome. We're going to see. But anyway, here's a little clip from Need to Know. It's a YouTube channel where Ross Coulthart and Bryce Zabel talk about the topic, and here's what he had to say about the possibility of Army Colonel Karl Nell becoming the next AARO director.
Well, I'm sure we both have heard things, and people are talking and on the internet, but I don't know that I'm seeing anything definitive. I know that one of your sources from your book was one of the people. Is that Karl Nell? That was one of the people.
He was actually he was a source for Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal for their debrief story, right. And he provided the support for David Grusch in the original David Grusch story that appeared in the debrief that broke the story of David Grusch, and he unequivocally backed David Grusch to the hilt as a person of integrity and vouched for what he was saying, which is quite extraordinary because, one, he's a full bird colonel, and two, he's a hugely well-respected person inside the US defense community. And yes, I've heard his name is being mooted as a potential candidate, but there are other names, and I know there's a pushback from Defence. The Defence Department, I'm sure, are very probably going to be trying to get their own candidate. Frankly, I do not for the life of me, Bryce, I'll have this say, I do not for the life of me understand why, if this is meant to be an oversight body reviewing the integrity of the Defence Department and heeding the requirements of law to ensure that they've done the right thing as far as oversight goes and transparency on UAPs, why the hell do we give the Pentagon or the intelligence community any input at all into the appointment of who it would be? And I think this is just a sad reflection on the extent of the power of the national security establishment in Washington, that even though I hear that Colonel Karl Nell is by far and away the most exemplary candidate for the job, it's still a subject of some debate inside the defense hierarchy who gets the job.
Well, there you got it. There you have it. Now, of course, as we all know, last week, I was actually a week ago today, I interviewed Jason Schertz, who runs the new YouTube channel Beyond Strangeness. And on his YouTube channel, he had this really good 16-minute long video that he put together talking about Karl Nell and who he is. And the fact that the mainstream media has not really been talking about Karl Nell too much, and when they really should have been, because he basically stood by and he stands by whistleblower David Grusch. Of course, David Grusch, the retired Air Force official who basically testified before Congress earlier this year, but before that, he actually appeared on an interview on News Nation, interviewed by Ross Coulthart, by the way, and he also was the subject of an article that appeared in the debrief, where he basically, Grusch stated that that of course there is a crash retrieval program as well as reverse engineering program of objects that are of non-human origin, and he said that there's a big cover-up, and that he not only was he told this by many people within the Pentagon and within these secret programs, but he was also shown documentation that corroborated everything. And Karl Nell, in that debrief article, made this statement. His assertion, he's meaning Grusch's assertion, concerning the existence of a terrestrial arms race occurring sub rosa over the past 80 years focused on reverse engineering technologies of unknown origin is fundamentally correct, as is the indisputable realization that at least some of these technologies of unknown origin derive from non-human intelligence. So Karl Nell's obviously knows things just as much as David Grusch knows about these things. So if he were to become the director of AARO, I'm sure that he would have, he would know better on how to get to the bottom of things, more so than Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. But again, see, the Pentagon is the one who chooses this person to be director. So I don't know. I have trouble imagining Karl Nell being named the director of AARO. But hey, right, he is one of the candidates according to Ross Coulthart, so we're going to see how this all plays out. And I think it's very important, because if you have someone like this in charge of AARO, then I think you're going to get some more answers. I would imagine you're going to get some more answers. I can't imagine that he's just going to be a face for the Pentagon. It's just a stooge for the Pentagon, like apparently Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick was, or is still, actually still the director. But anyway, there was some people talking about this. Here was on Twitter, here was Mike Colangelo, who's a presence on UFO Twitter, always giving us some good commentary on the whole topic. He says, Ross Coulthart and Bryce Zabel say that Karl Nell is one of the candidates for the new director of AARO. There is some pushback, though, from the Department of Defense. As you know, Karl Nell supported David Grusch in the debrief article and agrees that the United States has crash retrieval programs with non-human craft. He received some different comments here. Here was a comment from Decadentia, who says, it doesn't really matter, as the director of AARO isn't really in charge of anything. It's more of a ceremonial position set up as a lightning rod for public criticism of top secret U.S. government programs. He's not, quote, running, end quote, anything. So there's some people who don't think that this is going to happen, or that it will matter in the end of who becomes director. Christian Morales says, I think it's a hot potato. I think that AARO knows a lot more. I know they know that it's not Russian or Chinese. No way. There's a reason why they can't say it's non-human intelligence. Some elites will do everything it takes to prevent that. So the job is a hot potato. Who wants to lie to the public? So basically, Christian Morales believes that it's that maybe Karl Nell might not want to take that job, or because he might be forced to lie to the public, like some people suspect Sean Kirkpatrick was forced to do. And then somebody else says here, Turbo BMR says, if Department of Defense doesn't like him, then hire him. Well, yeah, if the Department of Defense doesn't want him to be in the position, they will not hire him. That's the whole problem. That's the whole, like, just like Ross Coulthart points out, like, it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, if you're getting someone to do an investigation into this, you're allowing the people who are basically guilty of this cover-up, picking the person that they want to be the director of the investigation. It doesn't make any sense. And that's what Coulthart is saying. And a lot of us, everybody in the UFO community has been saying that. It doesn't make any sense. The Department of Defense picks the person that's going to run the investigation. Well, where's that going to get us? I mean, if they do that. Now, it'd be interesting, the fact that if they were to choose someone like Karl Nell, just because of the things he said in the past, but I can't imagine it. But hey, if it happens, that should be interesting. But then a lot of people are going to start thinking other things. Oh, well, maybe Karl Nell was a plant from the beginning, and he's going to go in there and then just say, yeah, you know what? I thought there was something to it, but you know what? I'm wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong from the beginning. I guess you'll hear that if he finds nothing. Because let me tell you something. There is something there. There's no question about it, right? There's no doubt. Here's what somebody else says. Joe Maristella says, if Nell does end up getting the job, it could be a sign that the government is starting to take these claims more seriously, or that Grusch is a plant. Ha ha. Well, again, the government... See, a lot of people say that. Like, even a lot of the mainstream news articles you read about this, it will say something like, oh, the government's taking UFOs more seriously these days, like the Pentagon's taking them more seriously. They've always been taking them seriously. You just didn't know about it. The mainstream media never paid attention to it. They've always been taking UFOs seriously. There's no question about it. Of Christopher Sharp, of course, he's the founder and also editor-in-chief of of Liberation Times, which really does a great job, as I talked about in the past, of covering the Pentagon and UFO subject. He says Karl Nell should be appointed director of AARO. Putting someone who has a track record of standing by the whistleblowers is the only way to credibly lead this effort. And as we know from Jason Schertz, Karl Nell's background it's impeccable. I mean, this guy, he's not just an Army colonel. He's worked for different defense contractors like Northrop Grumman, and it's just an incredible. I'm not going to get into it all here again. It's very lengthy, his career. If you were to go through his career, it's an incredible all the different positions that he's held. I mean, at the highest levels. And for him, and that's why it's important to have someone like him, because he's saying that this stuff is true, and you make him the director, then he's gonna root it out. You would hope, you would think, unless the Pentagon just does the same thing to him as it's done to people like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Who knows? Anyway, here was a comment. Someone responded to Christopher Sharp, and this was Paul Reddington. He said, "It would be great if he did, but the gatekeepers are not going to go down this easily." Yes, it would be great, but again, you have to wonder, what are the gatekeepers want someone like Karl Nell in there as the director of AARO? I don't know about that. Or maybe they don't even care, because maybe they just realize in their minds, hey, we could name anybody. They can name anybody they want as the director. It doesn't matter. Right, but guess what? We're still not going to tell them anything. That could be their position. Who knows? Here's somebody else said the bearded UFO guy Gaz says Nell, Lou Elizondo, or even Grusch would be great. Yeah, wouldn't it? But you're not going to see that. No way. No chance. Lou Elizondo as the director of AARO. Yeah, okay. Here's somebody, Johnny Messiah says, from what we know about Karl Nell, due to speak to the Sol Foundation tomorrow, I think, his appointment could indicate a sea change for AARO, or indeed a possible marker for the D word, the disclosure word. His credentials are apparently of the highest level. Yes, they are. His credentials are of the highest level. And yes, Karl Nell will be speaking at the Sol Foundation at Stanford University on Saturday, and he's going to be talking about controlled disclosure. So again, it would be very difficult to imagine the Pentagon choosing someone like this, someone who's pro-disclosure, to a position that they get to pick the person. Well, why would they pick Nell, who's pro-disclosure, when obviously the Pentagon doesn't want to disclose a thing about this? They keep covering this up. I mean, we shouldn't even have to have something like AARO. We have enough right now. The people who are in the secret control group could step up right now and just tell us the truth and end all of this, and we wouldn't even need an AARO office to investigate this stuff. Just tell us what you already know, because they already have information on this. Why do we got to play this stupid game? Yes. And here's something from Klaus, who's also a presence on UFO Twitter. He says, I think people are going to be blown away by Nell's knowledge of the UAP subject and dedication to transparency. Yes, they would be. From everything we've learned so far about Karl Nell, people would be blown away by the things that he knows. And I think that he would be a great director for AARO, but again, we don't know if it's ever really going to happen. But he has to be better than Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, Kirkpatrick this past week, he was on. He was actually in a Hayden conference, and he was talking about his tenure as the director of AARO, and he was asked some certain questions. And basically, what I got out of listening to this, there's a segment here I'm going to play for you guys. What I got out of this was he basically, he was at the Hayden Center, and he made some statements talking about how he dealt with information that was given to him by whistleblowers, and basically like a whistleblower will come to AARO and give him a code word for some program that this whistleblower found out about that's dealing with reverse engineering or crash retrieval programs, and then from that point, he just the AARO, Kirkpatrick will, or Kirkpatrick, somebody from AARO or Kirkpatrick himself will contact the department where this program is supposed to be, and they just simply ask a question. Say, is this program real or not? And by law, according to Kirkpatrick, they have to tell him yes or no. But who knows? That's all he's doing is just contacting and giving them a quick call and finding out what the program really is. And then they can give him whatever answer they want, and he just moves on. Apparently, from what we heard at this Hayden Center conference, he doesn't go to the locations where some whistleblowers are telling him this is where they're storing this recovered craft that's alien in nature. He's not going to look at it. But anyway, listen to this segment from that Hayden Center conference.
And some of these are quite challenging, but since you're on your way out, I have a feeling that you won't mind getting fired early. One question. When AARO was first stood up, you were quoted as saying, "I have all the access I need." Can you speak to the status of the office, whether it's intelligence title, Title 50? Where do you get your authority to do the investigation that you're doing?
So the authority comes from legislation, which is law. It also comes from DOD, IC, DOE, DHS, NASA, right, and all the associated archives and whatnot. We have set up a security construct that they have all agreed to in order to how we handle the ingestion of material and information as people want to come in. We have a process, a very, very rigorous process that let's say Shane wants to come in and confess his sins and tell me all about the code words that he knows. I remember that. I'll remember that later.
It'll be on the record, right?
Yeah, right. He can come into our facility. We have an accredited facility to handle all of that. He may not even know who owns those code words, right? So he can come in, tell us, we document all that. And then all of those title organizations that I just named, right, we will pick out of his statement, hey, he said Flying Wombat was a program for reverse engineering.
Do we have Flying Wombats?
No, well, we don't. But it's one of my favorite names that if I ever got to name a SAP program, it would be that one.
Right. Well, you can have kids.
I have one. She won't do it. So we take Flying Wombat and his description of it, and we separate it from him because we have to protect him, right? And then we give that to OD&I, CAPCO, OSD SAPCO, DOE, IN, DHS SAPCO, all of them, and go, is this your program? If it is, I need the records on that program. And they go through and they'll find it.
And you're authorized to get those records.
We're authorized to get those records by law, and then they'll provide that to us. And we've done that many, many times.
Right.
And then we will assess that program. Is this program really what he thinks that program is? Now, for those of you familiar with how the security constructs of some of our special access programs work, very few people actually see that file. And he, as an engineer or an operator, may only be working a piece of that pie, and so he may have interpreted this as something that it's not. Or he may have seen something that he shouldn't have seen. That's an unauthorized disclosure.
Sure.
Do you come back and tell me what I didn't know, or is it?
No, I'm not going to come back and tell you what you didn't know because you're not cleared to it, right? Now, when he comes in, this is an important piece. When he comes in, right, so he was a previous federal employee working on Flying Wombat. He signed an NDA for that. He's still allowed to come in and disclose to us, but he is not exempt from his NDA when he walks out the door, and he still has to protect that information.
As you can see, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, that's like you're just letting him get away with it. You're just letting him get away with it. Anyway, Joe Murgia, or also known as the UFO Joe, who I always talk about, he's another presence on UFO Twitter. He offered a comment about this. He says, Kirkpatrick is doing his best to retain plausible deniability. He's told code words and then asks for the records and files of those programs. And when he finds an unremarkable program detailed, he just accepts it and doesn't dig deeper. And he certainly doesn't visit the locations to see with his own eyes what they're working on. This way he can say, I have found no evidence of extraterrestrial or off-world technology, and still be telling the truth. And basically what Murgia basically puts together, this is what he imagines, this is how he envisions what Kirkpatrick is telling us. He says this: they showed me files and told me those were the programs. I found nothing that suggested anything non-human. If it turns out those files were wrong, misleading, and covering up the true nature of those programs, then I was deceived by someone. Not my fault. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's really just, gets some information, makes a phone call, gets told something, and just lets it go. Doesn't go actually out and do any kind of investigation into it. Not the investigation that is required. That's not what's happening here. And then Mergia also said, I suspect he's been told to do it this way and hasn't pushed back. We need someone in AARO who will push back. Well, if it's Karl Nell, if it turns out to be Karl Nell, well, that would be a game changer. I would hope, based on Karl Nell's background and his position on this subject. He's already accepted this for whatever reason. I would imagine. Of course, Nell said that Grusch is beyond reproach. And he also says, yes, everything that he's saying is correct. So there are things that Nell already knows about. I mean, Nell himself might know where some of these programs are taking place right now. He might know some of the locations himself. So, of course, he would be the ideal candidate to serve as the director of AARO. But again, as Ross Coulthart pointed out, and as many other people in the UFO community will point out, it would be amazing if Karl Nell is appointed by the Department of Defense to head AARO. Because why, if you want to cover something up, why would you put someone in there who's against that? It's hard to imagine. But I guess we'll find out. We'll find out. Oh, yes. And here, another comment from Mergia. He says here, to be clear, this is my opinion on what's going on. I could be wrong, but if it's correct, why is it happening? Is he being told to do it that way? He's obviously not the one the United States government would want making such an important announcement. When it becomes undeniable, who will be the person who tells the world? We have intact craft of unknown origin and they're non-human dead pilots. Some have said pilots lived for a short time after the crashes. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. It's very interesting, though. I find all of it very interesting. And again, Karl Nell, he has an impeccable background. He's someone who's been at the highest levels within the Pentagon and in the military-industrial complex. And he's someone who says that there is a crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. If he becomes a director of AARO, maybe we'll get somewhere then. I can't imagine him acting like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. I just can't see it. But then again, we just don't know. We'll see. Okay, I guess I want to move on here a little bit. I want to talk about some of the comments I've received recently from people on Spotify and on YouTube. With regard to my most recent episode, I did an episode called, and the title was "Flashing Light and Thundering Boom in Minnesota Mystify Federal Officials." And basically, on Monday evening, of course, as in that podcast, there was this loud bang, a bright flash followed by this very loud boom, and nobody knows what it is. And it's something that happens on a regular basis. A lot of times you just hear about a boom being reported. In this case, there was a bright flash followed by a boom. But it's happening all over the world. Nobody knows what's going on, and nobody knows who's responsible or what it is. But I received a lot of comments on it on YouTube and on Spotify. And here are some of the comments from some of the people who follow me on Spotify. Let's see here. Walmart Clearance says, we may never receive a 100% confirmation on what is making these booms, but my opinion is that it's not aliens. I'm a believer in aliens and UFOs and UAP, but their crafts typically do not go boom. Yes, that could very well be the case. It might not have anything at all to do with extraterrestrials whatsoever. And I did say that during that podcast. I guess the whole issue is I don't know what it is. I mean, I really don't even know where to begin. I have no clue. I mean, you could sit there and there's all sorts of different kinds of theories out there. You could say, well, maybe they're tunneling or under us or something like that. And that they're using explosives to make tunnels, or maybe the government's doing it. I mean, there's just so many different. But there's so many different theories, but all of them sound absurd. I mean, what is going on? We don't have an answer, and it sounds tremendous. These booms are tremendous. Here's one from Kyle M. In the UK, if a gunshot is reported, the police may have techniques to triangulate the sound and CCTV to pinpoint suspects. Yet when it comes to this stuff, nothing. I'm so sick of the lies. Yes, I'm sick of the lies too. I mean, we still have nothing. I mean, this is something that's been going on a long time. These mystery booms are going. There was a YouTube channel. It's off and on sometimes. Secure Team 10, very popular UFO channel. Pretty much, I think he only publishes one video a month these days. But he used to talk about this a lot too. This has been going on a long time. These mystery booms, we have no answers at all. It's like the cattle mutilation. We never got any answers ever, never from any government entity at all. Never. They have ideas maybe, but there's no conclusive evidence to show what causes cattle mutilations or mystery booms. We don't know. Now, the cattle mutilations, I do believe that is most certainly, in a lot of those cases, the extraterrestrials are responsible because people saw flying saucers a lot of the times in the vicinity when these events occurred. And there's actually been some people that actually saw alien creatures doing things to cows. There's actually been reports of that. I've actually Linda Moulton Howe on one of her shows, one of her documentaries. I think it might have been the follow-up documentary that she did on this. She had the one initially in 1980, Strange Harvest, but then there was a follow-up, I believe, in the 90s where she did another one, and I remember there was an incident where two people actually from a distance were watching these alien creatures move this cow along up some ramp that they couldn't, an invisible ramp of some sort. So yeah, but as far as these booms, there's nothing. We got nothing. Here's from Max Collins. He says, I definitely don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but my best guess would be some young'un messing around with chemistry and rocketry, very similar looking to SWAT-style gadgets. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, anything's possible here. We just don't have any answers from authorities on this. I mean, it could be. Maybe it is some kids that are getting hold of something that makes loud sounds like that, and they're able to get away with it continuously all over the world on a regular basis. I don't know. That could be it. I don't know. Someone else here says, Mollert says, looked like a firework to me. Could have been. I don't know. But if it is, well, what kind of firework is it, though? I mean, we're talking over a large region where people's windows are rattling and car alarms are going off. I mean, if it was a firework of some sort, I mean, are they blasting? I mean, somebody would have blasted. It would have to blast right outside someone's house and someone to see the blast itself. I don't know if that's the case. It could be, but it doesn't make. I mean, what kind of firework is it that's rattling windows and causing car alarms to go off? Causing stuff to fall off shelves. It's something powerful. The ground is quaking, but yet it's not an earthquake. Here's another one. This is from Fred. He's talking about Mick West. Mick West has a bug-sized brain. Loud booms, #1 industry in West Virginia. Meth labs, wild guess. ETs in a beef over Earth firing weapons at one another. Space Force particle beam blasting UFOs. Hey, anything's possible, right? Orest Katov says they're called skyquakes. Pretty interesting and still unexplained. Check in Wikipedia. And here's Sam Orion says, I think the explosions are most likely kids playing with acetylene bombs. YouTube it. They are extremely loud. Oh, well, if that's what it is, maybe acetylene bombs. No one's ever been caught doing this yet, though. Maybe it is, but no one's been caught doing it yet. Molly 888 says they had them down the shore in Wildwood last year. I always think it's got to be dynamite underground used by the government who are boring tunnels, building bases or something. Yeah, we're just left with no answers all the time on this one. And now I'm going to shoot over to YouTube to see some of the comments on it from here. Quacks Too Much says, I'm guessing it is probably military. A few years ago, several times over about a 2-week period, I saw extremely bright lights about like lightning coming from the ground on the nearby Vandenberg Air Force Base, now Space Force Base, and accompanied by an extremely loud boom. The first time I heard it, I looked for a nuclear bomb, but it was about 5 or 6 miles away and I saw no fireball. These explosions were at night. It hasn't happened now for a few years. Let's see here. I'm going to go through some more comments here. Here's from Gray Owl. If I didn't know better that there sounds an awful lot like rod knocking under the hood of a nuclear-powered TR-3B, better get that craft in for a service before she melts down. And then, of course, in addition to the video, there was actually in that podcast that there was actually a little section of a video, surveillance video that's from a resident that you could see the flash and then hear the explosion just shortly afterward. There was also another video taken from the same time, around the same time, from a local airport in this Minnesota community. And in that video, you could see something flying. Now, at first, officials thought that this was something, some object flying, and then that was what caused the explosion. That led to the explosion. However, they changed their stance, and then later on, they said it was a bug. And Oculus Explorer says that's not an insect. It doesn't take a genius to see that's actually covering ground and off in the distance, played in top slow motion, and you can clearly see it come from way off in the distance. Actually, now if you watch the video, this is something I haven't talked about yet. Now, after I did the podcast, I was checking out the surveillance video that shows the boom, and you could actually see a streak going through the sky. I'm going to show that here right now. You can see, just notice the streak, and I'll put a circle over that section of video so you can see what I'm talking about. So you see the flash, then you see that streak, and then you hear the boom. So you can actually see something streaking up there in the sky in the other surveillance video, not the airport one, but the other one. So I don't know what that's all about. I didn't notice it the first time I watched it. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe that object at the airport does have something to do with it, and maybe it wasn't an insect. But then Brian 0523 says insect, period. Some people believe it's an insect though. Techni9992 says it's a meth lab wizard. Yeah, meth labs, when they do blow up, they make a lot of noise. But if it was a meth lab blowing up, I think we would have known about it by this point, because authorities there would have been neighbors complaining, I'm sure. Anyway. Oh, I also received a video from Mr. Wilson, who says he hasn't really enjoyed my videos lately. He says, I hope you make more episodes talking about alien stories and encounter. I love those episodes. I wrote back to him, noted. And also Gray Owl responded. He says, yeah, if you don't start making Mr. Wilson happier with your content, I guess we'll just have to shut the whole thing down and go back to the drawing board. Okay, yeah, I get what you're talking about. There's just been a lot of stuff going on right now with the government that I thought was important to talk about. But yes, I do want to talk about, I love, more than anything, I like talking about alien stories and encounters more than anything. I'm just tired of the cover-up, but there are things happening right now that I think need to be discussed at the same time. But I will be talking about alien stories and encounters in some of my upcoming episodes. In fact, as I've been talking about, I want to do something, a bigger episode about missing time. And I actually just finished rereading recently the Allagash abductions, and this week I'm going to finish reading Missing Time by Bud Hopkins. And I want to just talk about the implications of missing time, people that experience missing time in so many different cases, that these beings have the ability to basically make you forget. I mean, you could be sitting here, and I could be sitting here doing this podcast, and next thing I know, it's an hour later, and maybe the tape will still. That would be great if it'd be great to get abducted while I'm in the middle of doing a podcast, because then maybe I would have some sort of video evidence to prove it. And who knows? Maybe it will happen one of these days. But yeah, that's something. I do like talking about those kind of things more than this government nonsense. This government stuff gets me angry, but it's very important, and I need to talk about it in these podcasts. But anyway, I want to do relating to the flashing light and thundering boom in Minnesota. I did do a poll on that, and I want to go over that one. And I asked the question on Spotify, what is causing mystery booms? 2 people, or 3.9%, said human enemies. Yeah, could be, maybe. Could be human related. Could be some criminals doing it, because it would be considered criminal activity that would most certainly be disturbing the peace, or at the very least. At the very least, I mean, those explosions sound tremendous. 10 people, or 19.6%, say extraterrestrials or non-human intelligence. So not many people, not even close to the majority, believe that extraterrestrials had a hand in it. 18 people, or 35.3%, say natural phenomena. Could be some sort of natural phenomena. That's certainly true. Could be. I have no idea. And then finally, 21 people, or 41.2%, the majority, say it's government tests, that the government is doing something and they're just not telling the citizenry about it. Could be the case. I mean, they have no answers. How could our authorities how could government officials, how could federal officials not know what the hell's going on with these incredibly loud mystery booms? How could they have no answers? So maybe they have no answers because it's them and they can't tell you what they're doing. Maybe that's what it's all about. Hopefully we get an answer pretty soon, though. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.